Hello, everyone. It's the Rational Female. Got two lovely guests today, Tim Goldich and Blueorange 22. They've both been on my channel twice now, and we're hoping to do this on a regular basis. So today's topic is on male circumcision. So this was Blueorange 22's suggestion. So please, Thomas, go and tell us what your thoughts are on this.
Well, intactivism to me is one of my biggest issues as a men's rights activist. And to answer the question in the title of the video, is male circumcision doing more harm than good? The answer is yes, and very, very significantly so. People don't understand the anatomy of the foreskin. The most sensitive parts of the penis are removed, and the majority of erogenous tissue. So I have a shirt here about circumcision, which I know makes me look like a total nut job, but I'm going to wear this out in public today to see the reactions I get. The parts that I want to focus on that get removed, the frenulum, the ridge band, and Meissner's corpuscles. Meissner's corpuscles are specialized fine touch receptors. Fancy word, basically, for nerve endings. In addition to that, I've seen studies suggesting possible mental changes and psychological damage, possible changes to the brain structure. I'm not as well versed in that, but let's just say it's not. Let's just say it's the damage to the nerve endings. That's doing more harm than good. So,
Thomas, can you explain to those out there that might not know what intactivism is and what that means?
intactivism means that you are against circumcising babies for non-medically necessary reasons. So it's being against routine circumcision, as is done commonly in the United States, Australia, Canada, South Korea, Philippines, and then circumcision of children of any age who can't consent. So in some Islamic countries, it's done at age 7. Really mutilating the genitals, slicing off nerve endings of the genitals of children who can't consent and don't need it.
Yeah. So intactivism is all about keeping the penis intact.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right, that's very interesting. And I was saying this just before to Tim. So my view on male circumcision is probably a bit skewed because I have men in my family who are circumcised, and they would generally say that male circumcision is a good thing and female circumcision is a bad thing, which I think is a very common viewpoint. So this is something I've been very, very conflicted about, like ever since over the last like decade or so that I was getting into like gender politics and that. And because I think female circumcision is seriously barbaric, and my view on male circumcision, I don't know what to say because I grew up in a house where people in the family like have done it, and they would very much say that there are very positive aspects to it. Like they would say it's cleaner, they would say it's they would use the rite of passage arguments as well. And from what I've researched, and this isn't to say that male circumcision is not a bad thing. I don't think male circumcision is a good thing. Female circumcision is a more invasive procedure because women, obviously, I don't have to describe it too much, it's very graphic, but it's a more invasive procedure, whereas male circumcision is, because it's not the same, like female circumcision is akin to castration, whereas male circumcision, you're removing the foreskin. So
all right,
man is still capable of etc., whereas a woman is completely like can't feel any pleasure.
Well, it should be noted though that it should be noted first of all, hold on, that female circumcision runs a gamut. So it can be the removal of the clitoral hood, which is pretty analogous to what male circumcision is. In fact, it can be just a ceremonial nick, which does not remove any tissue at all. So it's unclear what the percentages are. But yes, at its worst, as in clitoridectomy, the female circumcision is definitely worse than standard male circumcision. But again, it runs a gamut, and it's not clear, what the percentages are.
Well, I mean, first of all, I don't even think you need to discuss female circumcision or FGM in the same conversation as male circumcision. I don't think you have to make a comparison. You wouldn't say, well, cutting off the finger is fine because cutting off the whole hand is worse. I mean, there's no other issue in the world where you say, well, this thing isn't bad just because this other thing is worse. So circumcision should be its own conversation, and the comparison isn't really relevant to if something is bad or not. Something is either bad on its own merit or it's not. Now, when you say the men in your family react to it positively, this is very, very common. And this is how I felt about it until I started doing more research into the anatomy and into what actually happens, and then talking to some men who were cut as adults for non-medical reasons. Men simply don't know, and it's very commonly accepted, and men don't know about the anatomy of the foreskin. They don't know what's happened to them. Everyone else around them had it done to them, so to them it just feels normal.
Yeah.
There's the rite of passage thing as well, where if you grow up and that's part of your culture, of course, you're going to be positively attached to it. You're going to think, oh yeah, this is something that, you know, we do in my culture or my religion or my family or whatever it is. The issue really is just a lack of knowledge and a lack of education into the physical damage that circumcision actually does. And a lot of people, most men, the vast majority of men who are circumcised, if you grab them off the street and you ask any one of these three things, do you know what the frenulum is? Do you know what the ridge band is? Do you know what meisner's corpuscles are? They won't know. They have no idea.
No.
I mean, I was fine being circumcised, again, until I found out. And then until I started reading other people's accounts and I realized, oh my God, this has been done to me. So.
Right. I mean, I will say that from my perspective, I do think it's very barbaric. I would like to ask, though, and this is a very important thing, what is the reason behind circumcision? Because from what I know, a lot of it's to do with religion. Like you mentioned, Islamic countries, and there's a kind of religious/spiritual aspect behind it. So what is the actual reason behind it?
Well, I would say that the actual reason behind it is reducing male libido. It's about reducing male sex drive.
Right. That makes me think of Kellogg's.
Same with women. I think that's also about reducing female sex drive. In the case of men, it's about reducing male sex drive under the notion that women are safer around men that are less highly sexed, and you have less unwanted pregnancies to deal with. For women, I think it's about reducing female sex drive in order to increase the libido gap through which women gain a lot of power.
I mean, does it reduce male libido then? The circumcision?
Not libido exactly, but it reduces the pleasure, and therefore it reduces the drive to some extent.
I see.
I've seen studies that say it increases the drive, which doesn't actually surprise me. If it's a less satisfying experience and it's an urge you're going to have, you might need more of that stimulation to fill those urges, which I'm not sure. Studies go either way with libido. Men aren't going to stop having arousal because hormones are still hormones. That really doesn't change at all. But yeah, religion is, I would say, in most places in the world where it's done, religion would be the reason why. In the United States, what's so infuriating is that it's so cultural. People do it and they have no idea why. They just say, oh, it's cleaner. Oh, it's what my husband has, or it's what I have, so I want my son to look the same way. It was touted in the United States in the 19th century by Dr. Kellogg, and in his
yes.
opinion,
What a piece of work he was.
You know, he was a psychopath.
He was a psychopath. It was done to reduce masturbation.
Yeah.
Nowadays, most Americans, they just do it. They don't know why. They just do it. Obviously, there's a lot of money in it. The medical industry. Foreskins are used in women's skin. In women's skin cream.
Yeah.
So hospitals, of course, they get to charge money for it.
That's right. There's a lot of money in those foreskins. Hospitals make a lot of money off of those.
Oh, that is disgusting.
Yes, it is. That's right. It's used in women's skin
really,
cream,
really
high-end.
I didn't know that.
Skin creams. Yeah.
All the
you
money.
know what though? Because I know it's not a big thing in the UK, and I've just done a video actually about Sex and the City, which should be going up at some point. But and there's this episode in Sex and the City, right, where the women are talking about male circumcision, and bear in mind this show is like 20 or 25 years old, so they're just talking about it so casually, and they're all saying like, oh yeah, I wouldn't want a guy who is not circumcised. And it's a whole episode. And as someone who's not American, for me, that's really, really strange, because it's like, I always thought to myself, like, what? Like, what does it matter? Like, I mean, not getting too graphic, but personally, I wouldn't even be able to tell the difference because, like, I don't know much about circumcision. So it's not something which I would even know, like, what does it look like? Or I wouldn't have a clue. But
well, you would
as women
notice.
talk about it,
Yeah.
You would notice the missing parts.
Yeah.
You would definitely notice the missing parts, and you'd notice a different texture. When a man, not to get too graphic, is aroused, then you can't tell when the skin is retracted. But there's definitely, like, structurally, the structure is different. But yeah, that attitude is very normal.
Right.
The foreskin covers the head of the penis, you see. And in uncircumcised men, that's so. There's an opinion out there from women that the circumcised penis is cuter, and that's probably a big factor in why we circumcise. It's probably an underlying cause. I would think that very definitely.
I find that quite strange and also a bit disgusting because, like, how would it sound if a man was to say a circumcised woman is somehow purer? Because I know there's a big thing about purity and about women being pure and all that, and that's partly why they do it. But that just sounds really sick to me.
Yeah.
You'll never hear a men's rights activist say that FGM, female circumcision, is anything other than barbaric and disgusting. I mean, it's just, you'll never ever hear a men's rights activist say that.
No.
But yeah, I mean, people do it because, like that episode Sex and the City, oh, we don't want our son to get made fun of at school, or we don't want women to be grossed out. So because it's what everyone's used to, in America, uncircumcised is different. So because it's different, it's weird, and it's not what I'm used to. So ew, kind of gross. You know, it's very much.
Is that still the case now, though, or was that just more in the 90s?
It's less now, but it is still probably the majority of people.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at pornography, the vast majority of the male porn stars are circumcised.
But it's changing very quickly.
It is changing. That's true.
I was on C-SPAN. It's very much an age thing too. The younger you go, the younger cohort you look at, the more likely people are to be intactivist. I was on C-SPAN a couple of days ago talking about this. Men my age, we do talk about this, and a lot of guys are absolutely furious. So I don't want to make it sound like, oh, it's a very small number of people. It's the minority of people, but it's changing very quickly.
Yeah. So
sorry,
can I talk for a minute about
also for future reference, just say corn just because his YouTube algorithm is stupid. But yeah, that's actually something I was thinking, like, is circumcision quite common in corn?
Yeah, it is. But I'm sure, as Thomas says, that it's changing.
Okay.
You know, everything's changing after all. Okay. But I'd like to talk about at some point about why there's such resistance to this issue. And because I think it's important to understand what we're up against. And in part, it's about females feeling accused. So if you start going on about circumcision, then somehow women start to feel like they're being accused. And with men, it's a big psychological hurdle to overcome. Now, of course, with the younger men, you know, because cultures change. So, but for men my age or still quite a bit younger, it's been so normalized. Right. Two, you see, you're trying to tell circumcised men that something brutal was happened to them, that there was some trauma that was inflicted upon them, and you're trying to tell them that they're incomplete, that something's missing, and that certain levels of pleasure and so on are missing for them, and they just recoil. They don't want to hear that. That's a very unpleasant thing to take in, and it's much easier and for men much more palatable to just think nothing happened to me. I'm fine the way I am, right? That circumcision is doesn't mean shit, Sorry about that. But, that would be the attitude for a lot of men out there. And so that's what you have to overcome, you see. Because I resisted this issue too for a long time until it had to sink in that something was done to me, that I'm missing something, that that I may have suffered some trauma as a little tiny boy, and these things are uncomfortable to deal with. So most men just don't. They just dismiss it.
Yeah, I'll say, and this is not meant as an attack at all. I was a bit surprised, Zarina, when you said what you said about you were conflicted about circumcision. I would have thought if someone's been in the men's space enough, they would have encountered opinions like me and Tim's before. But I understand, being in the UK, it's probably very little discussed. And then hearing the men in your family say that they like it, say that it's cleaner. But it just goes to show the gap in knowledge that we're up against, as Tim says. Yeah. And a lot of men, I think, don't want to accept it. They don't want to believe it. It's very, right. I mean, right. Who wants to think that happened to them?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, there's a movement. There's a movement called foreskin restoration, where you can't regrow the nerves, but what you can do is you can regrow some of the skin to cover the glands. I'm trying so hard not to be graphic. And when the skin has that coverage again, it no longer constantly rubs against your clothing, and it's no longer constantly exposed. So it's something called dekeratinization, where the glands will keratinize over time if you're circumcised, because it doesn't have that protection and doesn't have that moisture. It's when it grows more callous and less sensitive. Yeah. And when men regain that skin, they say the color changes, the texture changes, most of all, the sensitivity changes rather significantly, which for me is kind of really all the proof you need, because unless all those men are just making that up, where's that extra sensitivity coming from? I haven't done it because I'm kind of really waiting for, there's a organization called Foragin, where they're looking up stem cell research, stem cell therapies to regrow the actual nerve endings. And I'd hate to have to, okay, once that comes out, I regrew the skin, now I have to get it done all over again. So.
I mean, in my case, regarding being conflicted, I do think it's a very barbaric thing. The reason why I said that is more because, like, I know men who've gone through it, and they are very, very much like, they're either very indifferent or they just say it's very good. But hearing what you guys are saying, and I have heard people discuss this, absolutely, and they say it's very barbaric. And I think that is one of those things where I just don't know what to say. But I will say that there is something very traumatic, and you even said earlier, Thomas, that there are boys as young as 7 who do this. There's something quite disturbing, because it's like you're mutilating somebody's body at such a young age. And as you guys have said, a lot of the men who go through this probably, because obviously as children, I mean, I think I don't know if most people have childhood trauma. I think most people have some kind of childhood trauma, and the stuff that happens to us as a child, sometimes we don't always remember it, because as a kid you can't logically process things. You can't think, oh, what happened to me? So you grow up, and then like stuff happens and you don't really know where it comes from, and you start thinking, oh, that's a bit strange. So yes, it's just I think it's just very, very sick, honestly.
Indeed. There's another element too. There's this idea that men ought to be able to take it. There's something going on there. It's like right from the get-go, the boy is kind of, well, it's even called a rite of passage, this circumcision. So it's almost like toughen him up right from the very beginning. It's something about, and that's another thing that men recoil at, this idea that they're vulnerable. So if you start going on about circumcision as something that has damaged them or something, then you have to they have to allow that the male is vulnerable, and a lot of men recoil from that.
Yeah, I got a study here. There's a lot. I mean, I used to research this, quite intensively, and intensely or extensively. I made both those words into one word. What do they call it? A portmo? portmanteau.
Anyway,
irregardless, yeah.
That was one study, and there's a lot that suggests that you are basically changing the brain, because when you think about it, when you think about trauma, I mean, imagine you're 5 hours old and you're strapped down to these little awful looking, they look almost like little caskets, and then the most sensitive part of your body is ripped, torn, shredded off. People think it's cut off. It's more of a ripping. I've seen a video and it's absolutely horrific. The baby's screaming in agonizing pain.
That's right.
Sometimes they use painkillers, sometimes they don't. And in the US, there isn't even a standard procedure for it. So procedures kind of vary. And sometimes it's barely covered in medical school. And some American medical textbooks don't even have the foreskin at all. So there are doctors in the United States. There are doctors in the United States who don't know what the frenulum is, which is absolutely nuts when you think about that.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine if you're in your first day of life and you have an incredibly painful experience, why wouldn't that cause some kind of alteration to your brain? You know, why wouldn't that cause some kind of psychological effect? Even if you didn't consciously know about it, I'd love to look at, and this would be very, very controversial, but I'd love to look at rates of infant circumcision and maybe violent crime or maybe anxiety disorder or along those lines. My guess, if I had to come up with a theory, you would see that there is a negative effect on the brain. Maybe not for every single man, maybe not super significant, because people are going to say, oh, well, there's millions of circumcised men who are totally fine and they have happy lives and happy fulfilling lives. Okay, but if you took 10 million men who were circumcised at birth and 10 million men who were not, would you start seeing differences in rates of X, Y, and Z? I think you would. And you might be a man who you think you're totally fine, but you have problems with trust. You have problems with emotional attachment. You have problems with anxiety that people would say, oh, that's the normal level of anxiety to have. That's a normal level of X, Y, and Z to have that you would not have had you not been circumcised. That's just me kind of spitballing based on some of the studies I've read. There's another study, I'd love to see if I can find it, where they did, I don't know if it was an MRI. I don't know what kind of scan it was, but there was a difference in the brain chemistry of boys who were circumcised and uncircumcised, and then they went back 6 months later when they were 6 months old, and that difference had persisted. So it was still there 6 months later. Does it ever go away? You know, who knows? But I don't see how it's possible to inflict something very, very painful on a newborn baby and not think there's going to be an issue or potential for issues.
Yeah.
Now, you make an interesting point regarding like how to actually quantify this through genuine research. And I think that, I mean, obviously I can't comment because we haven't got any evidence to support this, but I do wonder if circumcision does cause mental health problems later on in life. Well, not necessarily cause, but contribute to mental health problems in life, because that's very, very serious. I imagine also things like body dysmorphia or poor self-image or problems in relationships. Yeah, I mean, what I'm just thinking now, though, is as I'm hearing this, is like, why is this even allowed? Why isn't this banned? Like, this should be banned. This actually should be banned.
Well, I've just been discussing why it's not banned, what the resistance is to looking at circumcision as an issue, as something that might be traumatizing boys, that might be barbaric. You know, there's so many factors. There's also the religious factor. So if you say that circumcision is all these things, which I believe it is, then of course the Jewish people also they recoil. You know, they feel accused. They feel like their beliefs and practices are being criticized, as it were, so there's that you come up against also.
I hate to go here, but I think one group of people where, not all, but there's a lot of hostility towards intactivists. There's a lot of wariness about intactivists, and there's a lot of downright misinformation. Are feminists. And I know there are many, many feminists who say they're against circumcision, 100% true. But there's a kind of undertone, there's a kind of undercurrent of, when I hear a feminist say that she's against circumcision, almost like resentment, almost like, well, this is something we say because we have to say it. And 10 years ago, it wasn't so bad. But in the last 2-3 years, I've noticed that and to be fair, I'm basing most of this on Reddit and various subreddits. But now on a lot of feminist subreddits or feminist leaning subreddits, a lot of dismissal and a tend to minimize and say, well, we agree that it's wrong because of consent, but oh, men shouldn't complain so much because oh, it's not that bad. And of course, they don't know really any of the anatomy or any of the studies on it. But there's this sort of push in feminism today to trivialize it or to minimize it or to almost kind of shame intactivists or almost kind of shame men for bringing it up or caring about it or spreading the information. Oh, well, you know, it's just a harmless piece of skin. It doesn't do any damage. We agree that it's wrong because of consent, but there's no harm being done. So, you know, MRA shouldn't make such a big deal out of it. And then another argument, something I've seen in the last 2 years, is now they're saying men don't actually care about circumcision. They're just using it as an excuse to bash women or to talk over women. And they don't really care about it. It's just an excuse to be misogynistic, which is just not, first of all, unbelievably narcissistic, but just completely ridiculous.
Well, it's really understandable that feminism takes a stand to dismiss this whole thing about circumcision. In my view, feminism is founded entirely on this idea that men have the power, women are the victims. Anything that calls attention to male victimization is going to be dismissed because feminism wants it understood that only women are victimized. Therefore, all the empathy should go to women. It's built deep into the foundations of feminism. Men have the power, women are the victims.
Yes, I completely agree. Yeah, and also, Tim, what you said about it being like a kind of rite of passage for men, it makes me think a lot of the myth of male power and this idea of, and also this other good book, Is There Anything Good About Men, which talks about how men have historically been expected to like be strong. And I think that there's a good side to that in the sense of like actual, you know, there's good strength, like say going to the gym, and there's bad strength, like being taught that violence is somehow a symbol of strong masculinity. And it sounds like the whole circumcision thing, being told to just go with it, because a lot of men will make the rite of passage argument, especially older men. And that argument seems to just be saying like, oh, you know, it's just okay. This is part of what it means to be a man. But actually that sounds quite sick. Like, I don't think going through severe bouts of pain physically, unless you're like working out, that's different. But going through like traumatizing pain doesn't really comply with like what it means to be a man, which I find a bit strange. But yeah, just one second.
But you see, there's a clear-cut correlation between how militaristic, I guess militaristic a tribe or a group is, and the severity of the initiation. There's a very definite correlation. If the society needs or believes it needs males to protect them from hostile elements out there, it will increase the brutality of the initiation in order to toughen up the males. It's part of the process of turning males into aggressive beings that can protect the tribe.
Yeah. So hi. Sorry that I was late.
Jana's just joined.
Hi.
Yeah.
So do you want to share your thoughts on this?
Jana.
My thoughts on circumcision. Yeah. Well, basically, we have both male and female circumcision. Everyone agrees that female circumcision is dangerous, terrible, bad. I think the excuses for male circumcision usually come with it's cultural and so on and so on. Of course, the same can be said for female circumcision. It is cultural. Maybe because the cultures that promote male circumcision tend to be more dominant, have more money or something like that. That's why it is more accepted. Or people also argue that male circumcision is somewhat less harmful to the male than it is to the female. But to be honest, both of them are potentially harmful and unnecessary, or not beneficial. I think on this topic, you always have to be careful because culturally you could hurt people, especially when it comes to male circumcision. I think with female circumcision, everybody tends to agree, except those from the very specific cultures that do promote female circumcision, but they tend not to be a part of the Western, discourse around this subject, because the people from those cultures who agree with that are not Western enough to even be in these discussions, or at least I've never been in a discussion with them. Although I've met a lot of women who have experienced circumcision, but they tend to be on the side of it is wrong because they have already become Western. Personally, I wouldn't do it or advocate for it because, I think it's unnecessary. I don't see the point, and it's harmful to the boy. But I find that every time you try to argue against it, you interact with cultural. You're being culturally insensitive, and so this is something that is very difficult to overcome because how do I complain about a culture that's not my own? There are people from the culture who want this like that, and they say, this is our culture, please respect it. And who am I to tell someone else that? This is so I don't know. I find this topic is very complex, and I have a hard time arguing it, even though from a scientific point of view and everything, I would agree that we really shouldn't be doing this. But I don't know how do you overcome the cultural argument? Although for female circumcision, it's quite easy to overcome because I guess those cultures are simply not dominant enough to really have a voice.
Yeah, I mean, whenever it's a question of religion, it's such a difficult thing to talk about. But what I find sometimes works and gets through to people, if we look at the three religions that predominantly circumcise, it's Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. So what I usually point out is, well, there's lots of traditions that you used to do 2,000 years ago that you don't do anymore. So in the Bible and in the Torah, it instructs to put your wife in a tent and make her sleep outside for 3 days when it's a menstrual cycle. Obviously, we don't do that anymore. If you don't follow kosher, then why do you have to follow circumcision? So if you agree that there are old traditions that are outdated and too old-fashioned, and now that we've modernized, we no longer follow some of those old-fashioned traditions, why not make circumcision one of those things? One of the old things that they're in the Bible, in the Quran, in the Torah that you don't do anymore. Well, circumcision can just be one of those things that you've modernized and that you have grown past and evolved past.
I think they would say to that, I think I'm just saying from the arguments that I've had, they would say you basically don't get to choose your traditions because as a woman, the women who I've spoken to.
Oh,
no.
Frozen.
I think you've
Well, I think it is happening. What you're suggesting, Blueorange, is actually happening. There is an evolution in that direction. It's just very slow and meeting a lot of resistance, but it is.
No, I mean, she is right. I will say a vast majority of the time when this debate, when I'm debating someone and it goes into religion, it's a lost cause most of the time. It's like you see people are just, when it comes to religion, people do not change their minds. I have changed a few people's minds, but mostly you don't. Hey, we lost you there for a bit.
No, I accidentally removed you, because of the freezing.
Sorry, actually, where I am right now, I have terrible internet. I'm in the Caribbean. I told Tim about it. I came to visit my family, and I really don't have internet. So my internet is terrible. I don't know if you heard my argument. I said normally they would say they don't get to choose their traditions, and that because I am my husband is circumcised, he wants his kid circumcised. So I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's in America, most people who circumcise their son do it for that exact reason. Oh, well, the father's circumcised, so I guess that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah,
And that's
basically,
about
and then they would say, it is my tradition, it is my culture. The men that I know are circumcised, so therefore my son is, and you don't get to judge my culture. But then, of course, I guess you just present them with science and so on. But I mean, this is the argument that I predominate, and I mean, no one feels comfortable telling someone else, oh, your culture is wrong, your culture is bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm sorry, just because someone's religion says to do something harmful to a child doesn't make it okay. I mean, what if when the child is older, they convert to a religion that says you shouldn't be circumcised? Well, now you're taking that choice away. Doesn't it mean so much more if it's a choice that they make themselves when they're old enough? Like, I want to make this commitment to my faith. I want to make this commitment to my culture. So I'm choosing to do it because I'm really embracing it. What if they grow up and they say, I don't believe this. I don't want to be a part of this religion. I don't agree with it. But now I'm stuck with this. I'm missing nerve endings now forever because of what happened when I was too young to choose.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest.
I think go on.
If it were harmless, it wouldn't bother me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the consent argument obviously matters, and it still wouldn't be a good thing to do without consent. But if it truly was as harmless as most circumcised men in America believed, although most is changing again, it wouldn't bother me. I wouldn't really care.
I think taking a kind of humanistic approach is a good idea, because if we say, like, forget the cultural and religious aspects, like this thing of just like cutting off somebody's foreskin as a baby, just in the way it sounds, is quite disgusting. I think that's a good enough argument. That and the other, like, bucket load of reasons as to what it actually does to the man, like, all the things we discussed here. I think that's a good enough reason to say this is just something that should be not allowed anymore. I mean, and it's interesting, so many cultures and traditions have been outlawed because humans, we've evolved, we've moved past, we don't, like, burn people at the stake anymore. There are a lot of things we don't do anymore. So why are we still holding on to something that is generally quite sick?
Yeah, I agree. Well, that was one of the things that Cassie J mentioned in her conversion, how she got red pilled. She was shown video of boys being circumcised and the look of agony on their faces. If you actually see any of this footage, but of course we're never shown footage like that. But if you seek it out or if you show it to someone, it can really change their mind. Certainly had a huge emotional impact on Cassie J, who directed The Red Pill.
Yeah, Cassie J is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. And even just today, I was speaking to someone today, and I was speaking about not male circumcision but female circumcision, because I know somebody who had been quite badly circumcised and so on, as a woman, and it caused her so many problems. But I don't want to turn this into anything about women. What are the problems that males tend to face? Well, personally, I mean, I also know people who have males who are circumcised. My husband is, I don't know if he wants that information out there, but yeah, I don't know what exactly are the problems. I haven't looked into it so much, but I don't know if you already discussed it, but maybe somebody could tell us more about the problems that men can face. Has it been discussed?
Yeah, we did talk about it earlier. Yeah, but you couldn't go on.
Mm-hmm. The trauma, the lack of feeling. Go ahead, Blueorange.
No, actually, we talked about the physical effects, like the loss of erogenous tissue, the loss of the frenulum, the loss of the inner mucosa, and then we talked about possible psychological issues as well.
Okay, I think one thing that also is important, although it may be very minor and maybe a lot of people don't consider it, I'm just thinking from things that happen in our lives or whatever, is that sometimes the foreskin can be useful if something goes wrong and you need skin for surgery to do something in this area and stuff. I know that. So I mean, that's one other reason to hold on to it. I don't know all of the, and I don't know yeah, people always use the cleanliness, but I don't, yeah, I don't
That
think
is an
that's
argument that I've heard, because I was saying
Yeah.
earlier, Jana, that men in my family are I'm not going to say who, but men in my family are circumcised, and they will typically say that it's cleaner because they say that it's hard to wash, and I don't know if I buy that. I mean, I don't think that's a good enough argument. It'd be like saying, I don't know, I mean, you don't slice off a bit of your armpit because it's hard to wash.
No.
Disgusting.
I'm not from a culture that circumcises, and I don't think anybody has a cleanliness issue. So,
yeah.
So.
There's also the argument around sexually transmitted diseases. Might as well bring it up since others will if we don't.
Yeah.
So. But I don't. Yeah, and that's a mixed opinion. You know, the information I'm seeing suggests that it has no bearing on transmitting disease, but others say that it does.
I don't think it makes a difference because they say to use protection anyway. So personally, I think that's a really, really strange argument.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at. I would say look at Europe, some of the lowest rates of circumcision in the world, and also the lowest rates of STDs in the world. I mean, you know, most of the studies I've seen debunk the HIV arguments that circumcision reduces HIV. Some have even said it increases HIV. Let me see. Most of them just debunk it and say it doesn't help. Most of them I don't think go so far as to say it makes that worse. But that's what I've seen in the last 5 years. Most of the new data comes out and says, no, actually does not help with HIV. And then when people cite studies about, it reduces HIV, it's always things from like 15, 20 years ago that just pertains and persists in people's minds.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that the entire West is totally against female circumcision, even though there are cultures that hold it there and think that it's important. Everybody would say this is pretty much barbaric. It's only done to harm the woman, which it is. It is only done to, I mean, feminists and so on would be like, this is patriarchy, essentially. What is going on here?
Yeah.
No,
which is a bit ironic since female circumcision is performed by women.
Right, but it is still argued that it's patriarchy because
of course it is.
Well, there's some because the women do it. The women do it in their heads to please men, in a sense. So they think that that if it's more painful for the woman, then she won't cheat. And I guess the culture just thinks if sex is painful for the woman, she won't cheat. So this is a protection for men.
Yeah, but from a politicized male perspective, the probable motivation is to lower female libido and therefore increase the libido gap through which women gain sexual leverage.
Oh, that can be another. That's interesting. Yeah. That's another way to look at it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You see, this is why I don't like. I always try and avoid bringing up female circumcision when I'm talking about male circumcision. I understand why it's fair to have them in the same conversation, but people just lose their minds when you do. I always try and not bring it up at the same time when I can help it. Is it just?
You know what it reminds me of? Actually, it's like when I try and say to someone, "Oh, there are all these problems of Islam. There's problems in the Quran, blah blah blah," and someone says, "But Christianity too," and I'm like, "I wasn't talking about Christianity. I was talking about Islam. It is not a relevant topic." So actually, that's what that makes me think of.
Yeah. But yeah,
I mean, I think that we can all agree that circumcision in general is pretty barbaric and horrific, but what are some steps that can be taken to hopefully someday outlaw this terrible practice?
Educate people on what the harmful effects are.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah, but trying to change such dominant cultures. The thing is, it's a very difficult one. I don't know. Is it prominent in Islam?
I think
as far as I'm aware, I didn't know male circumcision was prominent in Islam. I think female circumcision is, because actually I read it somewhere, but like, because a lot of people, Muslims will say, "Oh, FGM's nothing to do with Islam," like they say about everything. But there are literally texts which say that it's permitted, and also culture and religion tend to go hand in hand. So I don't think it's a coincidence that it's a lot of Islamic countries where circumcision is so prominent.
Yeah, it's very prominent. It's near 100% in a lot of places, and studies are showing
Islamic.
Yeah,
in
90 to 100%.
Okay, so you see, when you come up against something like that, I don't even see how you can fight it, because it's so dominant. That is an extremely dominant culture that you're dealing with, and they are pro. When you talk about, I'm just sorry to bring up female circumcision again, but this because because it's like these cultures are like fringe. They're fringe cultures, so it's probably easier to squash. But with Islam or something like that, I don't see how any amount of information is not in this. This is a choice based on emotion, based on tradition. This is not going to,
Yeah,
I wouldn't even attempt to try and change things in Islam.
No,
it's something. It's a very, very, very difficult thing to put across. What the problems, what the issues, what the possible traumas, the lack of the reduction in the feeling and the pleasure and so on. These are all very difficult things to broach, very difficult things to convince, but not impossible. And these things have shifted. We've seen it all through history. We've seen humans abandoning ideas that were very comforting. The idea that the earth was at the center of the universe was a extremely comforting notion that finally, it took a long time, but that did fade over time. And now so these things can change. And I think this issue of circumcision is growing. There is a growing awareness. It is slowly shifting. Don't you think, Blueorange? Oh, you're muted. Yeah.
To touch on that point, it is a very awkward thing to bring up, but it's something that men need to talk to guys about. When you're in the locker room or just when you're hanging out with your friends, and it's an embarrassing, awkward thing to talk about, but someone has to do it. So I think the way it changes is intactivists just being more visible, more vocal, get people talking about it, get people thinking about it. And I think it's one thing making posts on the internet, but I think talking to someone that you know face to face, in person, someone that knows you, someone that trusts you, someone that knows, okay, this person's not crazy, this person is rational, this person's a decent person. That's, I think, the most effective way to communicate, is face to face, in person, with your voice, with a person that you know.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good place to end now. So thank you guys. It's been a great chat. Blueorange, if you could send me any resources, links or whatever, I'll put them in the description box of this video, because it's a very, very important thing we're talking about. I hope that there's going to be more awareness and more dialogue about this. I feel like I've learned a lot from listening to you guys. And I think that honestly, we should probably see male circumcision as just a terrible procedure. We should just see it as something that's awful and that really causes a lot of harm to a lot of men. And I hope that there'll be more further research onto that. So thank you guys. Anyway, any closing thoughts? We're good. Thanks for watching, whoever's watching.